podcast. Shh, quiet. Really quiet. Okay.
Have you ever just looked at the person sleeping next to you? Like someone you've known for months or maybe even years.
Yeah, that's a very specific feeling.
Right. And you get the sudden cold drop in your stomach where you realize like you actually have absolutely no idea who they are.
It is terrifying.
Yeah,
Utterly terrifying.
It really is. So today we are pulling from this massive stack of clinical psychology papers, relational therapy notes, cognitive frameworks to dissect, that exact moment. We're doing a deep dive into what researchers call the ontology base of intimate relationship.
Right, the ontology base.
Yeah, and to be clear, our mission today isn't to talk about like superficial breakup drama or who texted whom. We are mapping out the precise cognitive architecture of relational uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. We're looking at the psychological earthquake, really.
Exactly. What happens when the mental avatar you've built of your partner violently clashes with their objective reality?
It's a fascinating, truly terrifying phenomenon. Because when we talk about this ontology base, we're talking about the foundational structure of how we perceive the people we love. Like, what is the nature of their being as far as our brains are concerned?
Right, like who are they fundamentally to us?
Exactly. And the clinical research we're looking at today zeroes in on this very specific psychological inflection point. It's where intimacy stops feeling safe and suddenly becomes a full-blown cognitive crisis.
And reading through these therapy notes, the imagery that kept coming to my mind to describe this crisis was that moment of extreme, almost uncomfortable clarity.
Like hyperfocus.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you see a macro close-up of a human eye, where you can suddenly see every sharp detail of the iris, the visible capillaries pulsating.
Oh, wow, yeah. It stops looking like an eye.
Right. It starts looking like this weird alien landscape. Suddenly, the familiarity completely drops away, and you're left in this stark, dimly lit room. It feels incredibly isolating.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
Thanks. And in the literature, they actually call this inflection point the place, right? So what exactly is happening to us from a clinical standpoint when we enter the place?
So the place is defined as the exact moment you, the individual, recognize a critical informational asymmetry.
Informational asymmetry.
Yes. It's the second you realize that your internal model of your partner, the mental map you use every single day to predict their behavior, to understand their motives, to feel secure.
To basically know them.
Right. It's the moment you realize that map no longer matches their objective internal reality.
Oh, wow. So the data you hold in your head is suddenly fundamentally at odds with the actual human being standing right in front of you?
Precisely. You think you have 100% of the data on this person, and suddenly you realize you maybe have, 20%? And the other 80 is a complete mystery.
Informational asymmetry. That is just a chillingly clinical way to describe having your reality fractured.
It is cold, but it's accurate. And the cognitive friction that this asymmetry generates is immense. Your brain relies on predictive models to conserve energy and keep you safe, right?
Yeah, so when the model fails, the system alarms just go off.
Exactly. Which brings us to the trajectory of how our brains actually process this friction. The research outlines a very specific pipeline here. We move from what they call scary places to weird places.
Okay, hold on. I actually need to challenge the research here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
I completely get why realizing your partner is a stranger is scary. It triggers a massive evolutionary threat response, right? Your brain is saying, danger, unknown entity in my safe space.
Absolutely. The threat response is fully activated.
Right. But the clinical model explicitly states this friction eventually transitions into a weird place. Weird feels almost, too passive, like too casual of a word for a full-blown relationship crisis. Why weird?
That is a great question, actually.
Yeah.
Because weird in this clinical context does not mean quirky or eccentric. It means surreal and structurally absurd. So the scary place is that acute, immediate anxiety you mentioned. The panic of their acting out of character, and I don't know what comes next.
Yeah, the classic fight or flight panic.
Exactly. But physiologically, neurologically, you cannot sustain acute panic forever.
Your body just burns out.
Right. The amygdala eventually exhausts itself. And that is exactly when you enter the weird place.
Okay, so it's an exhaustion of the threat response. You panic until you literally can't panic anymore, and then what? You just get confused.
It is profound cognitive disorientation. The weird place happens when your existing relational frameworks, the algorithms you've spent months or years building to compute this person's behavior, they just completely fail to process the current reality.
It basically encounters a fatal error.
Exactly. It's no longer just frightening, it becomes absurd. When you look at someone and their actions are so disconnected from the avatar in your head, the situation stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling surreal.
It's the sheer absurdity of a broken predictive model.
Precisely. You are stuck with a broken algorithm.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's like staring at a wall in your house where a door used to be.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. Like the first second, it's terrifying that the door is gone. Someone broke into my house and took a door. But after like an hour of staring at the blank drywall, it's not scary anymore. It's deeply, unsettlingly weird that you ever thought a door was there to begin with. You start questioning your own memory and sanity.
That is spot on. You were just completely disoriented.
But wait, why do we build these perfect, eventually broken models in the first place? Like, if these avatars are doomed to fail the moment human reality sets in, what's the psychological benefit of projecting that onto a partner? How do we get it so wrong?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at two highly destructive yet incredibly common cognitive habits identified in the framework: lensing and projection.
Okay, lensing and projection.
Right. We have an overwhelming tendency to project archetypal perfection onto our romantic partners, especially in the early stages, but honestly, often deep into a relationship too. We subconsciously design them to be flawless.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the research we're reviewing explicitly uses the phrase, "We assume they are designed by the gods."
Designed by the gods. That is heady.
It really is.
It implies we aren't just falling in love with a person, we are worshiping an ideal. It reminds me of how we remember people in the early honeymoon phase. You picture them bathed in this brilliant, harsh golden hour light. They look angelic, flawless.
Yes, the perfect lighting.
But if you look closely at that mental image, the shadow they cast on the wall behind them is elongated, sharp, and distorted. That shadow is the reality of their human flaws, completely hidden behind the high contrast light of your projection.
And that shadow represents the high contrast delta.
Yeah.
It is the massive gap between the idealized avatar we projected onto them and the flawed, complex, often messy human organism they actually are.
And that gap is where all the uncertainty breeds.
Exactly.
So why do we do it? Why do we put that golden hour light on them if it just creates a dangerous shadow? I mean, it can't just be romantic idealism, right? There has to be a mechanical reason our brains do this.
There is. And it is deeply functional. It is an almost utilitarian defense mechanism related to what the clinical framework calls component gaps.
Component gaps. Okay, let's break down what a component gap actually is for the listener.
Sure. So, component gap is a developmental or emotional deficit within yourself. The literature actually refers to them as the holes left from life.
Holes left from life. That's sad, but very poetic.
It is, and this could be childhood trauma, emotional neglect, profound insecurities, or, unmet developmental needs.
Basically the broken parts of us.
Right. And the human instinct, rather than doing the excruciating internal work of healing those deficits, is to utilize a romantic partner as an external regulatory mechanism to fill those specific gaps.
Oh, wow. So we project godlike perfection onto them because we desperately need them to be the precise shape and size of our own missing pieces.
Exactly. We aren't projecting perfection just to be romantic. We're projecting it because our own emotional survival feels dependent on them filling that hole.
I was thinking about this dynamic earlier, and the best way I can conceptualize it is like a massive computer hardware failure.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So imagine you have this complex emotional motherboard inside you, and there's a broken circuit, like a blown capacitor left over from your childhood, a component gap.
Right.
Now, instead of taking the system offline and repairing your own circuit, you grab a completely foreign piece of hardware, which is your partner, and you try to forcefully jam it into your motherboard to bypass the damage.
Oh, that is a highly accurate way to visualize it.
You are essentially demanding that their hardware regulates your broken system.
Yes. You are forcing a foreign operating system to bear the load of your own unhealed trauma. And what happens physically when you forcefully jam incompatible, unaligned hardware into a delicate system?
The tension snaps. It breaks. Which perfectly mirrors how fragile this whole setup is. When that projection breaks, it's not a slow, gentle fade. It's jarring.
It's violent.
Yeah. It's like dropping a delicate, vintage porcelain teacup onto a dark, hardwood floor. 1 second, it's holding your life together, and the next, there are just photorealistic, jagged shards suspended in the air.
Exactly. The absolute destruction of that fragile projection.
And you can't unshatter it.
You cannot. The teacup shatters because the system was never structurally designed to hold that kind of pressure.
Right.
No human organism can sustain the archetypal perfection required to act as an external regulatory bypass for another person's component gaps. It is biologically and psychologically impossible.
Wow.
And I really want to emphasize a core principle the research highlights here, which they call universal neutrality.
Universal neutrality, meaning what exactly? What is neutral about this destruction?
Meaning these mechanics, the projections, the component gaps, the jarring transition from the scary place to the weird place. They operate with complete neutrality.
So it doesn't care who you are.
Right. This has absolutely nothing to do with societal roles, gender dynamics, who makes more money, or cultural narratives about finding a prince or a princess.
It's just raw cognitive architecture.
Exactly. It applies to every single human brain attempting to merge its reality with another human brain. The failure of the avatar is universally neutral.
It's just gravity. If you drop the teacup, it breaks. It doesn't matter who dropped it.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, when you inevitably find yourself standing in the wreckage of that shattered teacup? You're in the weird place. The informational asymmetry is deafening. The natural instinct is to scramble, right? To try and desperately fix the avatar.
Yes, and the sources paint an incredibly claustrophobic picture of what this scramble feels like.
It is an agonizing state to be in. It really is. It's exhausting. It's like you're sitting in the passenger seat of a car late at night, rain lashing against the glass, white-knuckling the armrest, and your mind is just cycling through this broken, repetitive, almost nonsensical script.
Right, just spiraling.
Yeah, the therapy notes actually capture this internal monologue perfectly with phrases like blind, deaf, beautiful, unpleasing. You are agonizing, obsessing, trying to guess what your partner is thinking.
Asking yourself, why did they do that?
Exactly. What did they mean? Are they doing this on purpose? You are trying to figure out why they broke character.
And that right there is the trap. The trap of speculation.
The trap of speculation.
Yes. Hyperfixating on your partner's internal state, trying to guess their motives from the passenger seat of that dark car, is completely useless. The clinical framework defines this exact cycle as a low-fidelity, high-friction cognitive loop.
Low fidelity meaning you aren't getting any real truth, and high friction meaning it's burning you out.
Exactly.
You are spinning your tires in the mud and calling it a road trip. It drains massive amounts of psychological energy and yields absolutely zero accurate data about who your partner actually is.
It yields zero data because you are trying to solve an external problem entirely within your own internal architecture.
Wow.
You are playing chess against yourself and expecting to learn about your opponent.
That is such a profound way to say it. So, if we can't guess our way out of the weird place, if speculation is a trap that just exhausts us, how do we achieve what the research calls epistemic resolution?
Right. The goal.
Which is just a highly clinical way of saying, how do we find out what's actually true? How do we correct the error in our reality and upgrade our mental software?
Well, the framework provides a very definitive answer to this. The only clinically valid method of error correction in a relationship is what they call runtime execution.
Runtime execution. I love that term. It sounds like we're back to the computer analogy.
We are.
We stopped trying to jam the hardware in, and now we're looking at the software.
Precisely. If speculation is staring at a page of code and agonizing over whether it will do what you want, runtime execution is compiling the code and actually running the program.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Real-world physical experiencing of the relationship is the primary and frankly the only method of error correction. Truth cannot be gathered through isolation and hyperfixation in your own mind.
It must be gathered through active engagement.
You have to let the relationship play out in objective reality.
So you can't just stare at the software script of your relationship and guess if it will run smoothly. You have to execute the code in real time. You have to let it interact with the environment. Let it hit the bugs, crash if it's going to crash, and succeed if it's going to succeed.
Exactly. You have to gather pure data.
And the research has a beautifully simple phrase for this, right? You have to let life tell the objective state of your relational alignment.
Let life tell. It sounds simple, but it requires immense psychological surrender.
I bet.
You are actively stopping the attempt to control the avatar. You are stepping back and allowing the actual flawed human organism to reveal their objective reality through time and experience. You are testing the system under real-world loads rather than hypothetical loads in your imagination.
But here is the massive roadblock that I think anyone listening can relate to.
Okay.
If runtime execution is the only way to get the truth, Why is it so incredibly hard to do? Like, why do people stay stuck in the scary and weird places for years, gripping that steering wheel, agonizing over speculation, instead of just running the code and letting life tell?
It's an essential question. And the answer lies in a concept the research identifies as social friction.
Social friction, this is the noise, right?
Yes, the signal noise.
Yeah.
When you are trying to execute the runtime of your relationship to gather pure objective data about your partner, you are almost never doing it in a vacuum.
Right, there are people everywhere.
External social pressures, cultural scripts, the opinions of your friends, the expectations of your family, the judgments of your community, they all act as intense, distorting signal noise.
They're constantly interfering with your primary data collection.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's like you are trying to listen to a very faint, irregular heartbeat with a stethoscope, but you are standing in the middle of a crowded, loud nightclub. That is exactly what it feels like.
The noise is completely corrupting the signal. Your best friend says, well, if they really loved you, they would do X. Your parents chime in with, a good partner should be Y. Society and media dictate at your age, your relationship should look exactly like Z.
Right. All of those external scripts are bleeding into your runtime execution.
So when that happens, you are no longer gathering objective data about the human being standing in front of you.
You are filtering their behavior through the distorted lenses of 50 other people. You cannot reach epistemic resolution, true foundational knowledge of the relationship's reality, if the system is heavily contaminated by social friction.
So how do we actually isolate the signal? Because the way these therapy notes describe it, it sounds like you have to emotionally quarantine yourself to figure out the truth.
You do. You have to strip away the audience.
Yeah.
To accurately run the code, you need an isolated system.
It almost makes me think of an old late-night diner. You know the kind.
Oh, definitely.
Not a glamorous, cinematic, romantic comedy scene. Just a single humming, slightly flickering fluorescent light overhead. Rain streaking the dark windows. The rest of the diner is completely empty.
Mm-hmm.
It's just two people sitting in a retro booth, completely cut off from the noise of the outside world. No friends texting you advice, no family expectations hovering over the table, no cultural timelines. Just the two of you, the harsh light and the raw, unedited data of your interaction.
That is a perfect conceptual metaphor for isolating the system. You have to metaphorically sit in that diner booth. The clinical takeaway the researchers emphasize here is deeply profound. Life will tell, yet everyone deserves to figure it out independently.
Everyone deserves to figure it out independently.
Yes. You deserve the right to run your own code, free from external scripts, to see if the architecture of your relationship actually holds.
That is incredibly validating. You don't owe anyone else an explanation while you're gathering your data.
Exactly.
So let's synthesize this journey we've been on today. For you listening right now, if you are currently in the place, if your relationship has suddenly shifted from a known sanctuary to a disorienting, absurd, weird place, what we want you to take away from this research is that you're not losing your mind.
Not at all.
You're experiencing a recognized, thoroughly documented cognitive event. The informational asymmetry you feel is real.
And the intense discomfort you feel is simply the necessary friction of your idealized projections breaking down.
The shattering of that teacup.
Yes, the harsh realization that you have been trying to use a flawed human being to act as hardware to fill your own component gaps is incredibly painful, but it's also the absolute prerequisite for truth.
You cannot build a real relationship on a projection. You have to stop gripping the steering wheel. You have to stop the low-fidelity speculation where you're trying to read their mind.
You just step out of the car.
Walk into that isolated diner booth and let the runtime execute. You have to let life tell.
It requires a profound shift in perspective. You are actively moving from a state of anxious, tightly wound control to a state of observational experiencing. You are letting go of the God you designed so you can meet the human who is actually there.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the sometimes gothic, highly complex realism of our own minds, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. Something to take with you the next time you look at your partner.
If you do the internal work, if you successfully strip away all the social noise and friction of the outside world, if you finally drop the archetypal projections of gods and perfection, if you stop trying to forcefully use someone else's hardware to fill the developmental holes left by your own life, what is the actual reality of the flawed, complex, entirely separate human sitting across from you in that diner booth? And perhaps more importantly, when the runtime execution finally finishes and the objective data is laid bare under that harsh fluorescent light, Are you brave enough to accept the truth that life tells you?